So, hello and welcome to Autology, this weekly podcast that brings you the latest on automotive technology. This week's episode is called Aptiv/Wind River Acquisition, and we're here today with me, Rebecca Bell-Chambers, and Tawid Khan, who is a Software and Research Director at IHS Markit, alongside Richard Dixon, who is a Research and Analysis Associate Director for Semiconductors and Components. Hello to you both, and thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Autology.
Hello, Rebecca. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks so much.
Great, guys. Thanks. So this week's podcast is all about the recent news that Aptiv has announced a definitive agreement to acquire the software company Wind River from TPG Capital for $4.3 billion US. So the first question I have for you, Tawid, is what's the uniqueness of this deal? And to add, what makes Wind River attractive to Aptiv?
Thanks, Rebecca. This is a good question. So to me, what is unique about this deal is the digital preparation and transitional arrangement for Aptiv. Obviously, the big gainer in this deal is Aptiv, according to our market assessment and analysis. And I believe the use of Wind River software will allow Aptiv to develop new innovative products for the automotive industry, develop them faster and more cost-effective way. Now, more importantly, since the divergence of Delphi and Mackel, now it's called Luxoft, Aptiv lacks comprehensive product offerings like in their heydays. So having an in-house software expertise increases their footprint in connected car services and widens portfolios, as well as their existing EE architecture and safety product offerings. Now, this deal also gives us a clear picture that a complete ecosystem is what will drive and influence the OEM's future decision on supply chain and sourcing. So in case of ecosystem ownership, we shouldn't forget that all OEMs can afford vehicle touchscreen to cloud, e-commerce, and other digital services infrastructure. So there is a gray space in the market. And according to our analysis, this is where the market will see a significant development in coming years, especially with raw data processing between the vehicle and the cloud, and downstream and upstream of vehicle data using over-the-air technologies. So Wind River also, if we go back and look at their product portfolio, they also have software solution for the automotive backend ecosystem, such as cloud technology, edge cloud technology, and processing platform for edge and central cloud interface. So with their help, Aptiv may offer comprehensive vehicle to cloud managed data services to their existing and new customer. To add to what I have just said, another point is the data. And the data is becoming a fundamental element for both OEM, tier one suppliers, and semiconductor suppliers in their future business model. The key here is the crowdsourcing, which will enable data collection from many users and distribute them to other data customers, such as vehicle manufacturers, like OEM, component manufacturers, service suppliers like location-based or insurance companies, etc., etc. These will continue to grow exponentially because data is fundamental to all stakeholders in the industry. All of those stakeholders would like to use the data to develop new innovative features, personalized design, and also not only new product, but data is also key to future system validation and verification efforts. And in future, a vast amount of data will be shared between the vehicle, user of the vehicle, OEM backend, cloud, and digital twin computing infrastructure. So this whole scenario will provide a new opportunity in terms of business model and profit pool that will change the future of mobility industry completely. And this is where Aptiv is trying to tap into. So if I analyze all of it, looking at the, for an example, importance of data services, I'm not surprised that Aptiv is opted to buy Wind River in a cash deal. With this deal and the vehicle to cloud solution that are developed by Wind River will give Aptiv a competitive edge in future software-defined vehicle ecosystem, from onboard embedded electronics to cloud technologies. And this means Aptiv will have a new business models and opportunities, not just selling the automotive products and solution to OEMs, but also data monetization services for connected and autonomous driving technologies, as well as growing list of use cases, maybe beyond the car itself. And just to add to this, Wind River has broad product portfolios that span across automotive to defense and aerospace. So Aptiv can leverage these to expand their customer segments. So to me, that will be my take on all uniqueness of this deal.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And following on from that, a question for you, Richard. So we can clearly see that software is pivotal in this deal. Why do you think that is? And also, Aptiv is quite mature on EE architecture. Do you believe that this deal helps become the turnkey solution provider?
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, very good questions. Again, so I think, really basically, and just, everything, agree absolutely everything Tawid said there. Really the future of EE architecture is really the software-defined vehicle. I think you can, if you're really then looking at the EE architecture level, we're shifting away from hardware, and the clue is really in the name, software-defined vehicle. We're shifting away from hardware and towards software. So we're removing hardware and wiring and electronic boxes and all the associated evils which go with that, such as additional weight and complexity, and we're replacing that in software. And so basically, if you think about the EE architectures today, so far the tier one supply chain has been providing much more powerful hardware. So this is taking the form of what are called domain controllers, which are basically electronic control units, which were much more processing power and much more memory, and even what are called zone control units. And this has been all designed to support the development which is going on in software. But ultimately, the software is really the limiting factor here. So as the OEMs sort of look towards changing their hardware in their vehicles, to match this changing paradigm towards a software-driven vehicle, software is really the limiter. So, if this expertise is not in-house, certainly at the OEM, which OEMs like to keep some of the things in-house, but they cannot do everything, and they might need a supplier to do this. It would need to come from a supplier, somebody like an Aptiv, or Huawei, or other traditional hardware tier ones like Bosch and Conti, Vallejo, ZF. It's a fairly long list. I don't intentionally leave anybody out there. But basically, Aptiv is strong in hardware and then can be strong also in software. And I think, at CES 2 years ago, the Consumer Electronics Show 2 years ago, Aptiv really positioned itself at that point as a one-stop provider of new electronic EE architecture designs, where they have something called smart vehicle architecture. And this is essentially providing, along with other suppliers are doing similar things, but this essentially provides the building blocks, especially in terms of hardware, that manage these next generation combinations of data, electronic and electrical architecture, and then software. And I think technically, just on the technical level, software, beyond what Tawid said, software is really key in the EE architecture. As you abstract the functions from the hardware blocks into software, then you can replace this with fewer, much more powerful hardware controllers. And then the software is the part which gets updated, and you can do that much more often than you can with hardware, for example. And I think overall, Wind River would shore up this strategic software aspect and give Aptiv much more muscle to support OEMs and potential customers, which are rapidly evolving towards these software-designed cars. And that's supported by this centralized compute and hardware designs. So
Okay. So, Tawid, what does this tell us about the automotive software market outlook?
Well, as I have said before, this deal shows the importance of ecosystem ownership going forward. We are witnessing a similar trend in the industry by other suppliers and OEMs, especially with their recent M&A activities. To add to this, there is also a trend on expanding product portfolios. For example, last year, Qualcomm bought Arriver, who is to be owned by Veoneer, and whose specialities were pure software in the area of autonomy features. While Qualcomm traditionally concentrated on infotainment and connectivity. So with that deal, Qualcomm increased their product offerings in media, connectivity, and autonomy. However, if you look at very carefully, both of these deals, which is Aptiv, Wind River, Qualcomm, and Arriver, they both had one common factors, and that is software. Like Richard said, we all agree that the center of gravity in automotive industry is moving towards software, whereas before it was hardware and it was the star. However, the important requirement in future software defined vehicle is that software needs to bridge vehicle to the infrastructure with the help of cloud. So this brings the importance of ecosystem development and system integration. On the other hand, from a vehicle embedded system point of view, middleware becomes a key for future product development success. Therefore, ownership and design control of operating system and OS extension is a key requirement for future autonomous, connected electric vehicle or ACE requirements. And this is why we are seeing a fronting activities in middleware development in recent days and months and years. Now, I would like to add to one key point and wants to highlight this. With regards to software and system validation, key important components are the vehicle to cloud data, artificial intelligence, AI software, which is also a middleware component, and silicon vendors hardware. These three are the key for to do the complete validation of autonomous and connected car. These particularly more important when it comes to autonomous driving feature, which is higher than level 2 plus or level 3 and level 4. Now, we conducted a thorough analysis of software R&D spending last year, and we surveyed that. And what our analysis highlighted is that there is a challenge with regards to AI data and trained data set, especially with autonomous system validation, as I said, beyond L3, L4, and above. Now, in one side, OEMs are struggling to provide complete use cases because that required huge amount of regional and cultural and infrastructural analysis from their point of view. The other side is the suppliers actually don't have complete data set to carry out the complete training. They rely on OEM because OEMs have all the data, so they need to buy from them. And as a result, tier one suppliers are spending huge amount of money, particularly external resources, to develop simulation script for system validation, creating infrastructure, creating buying scripts, and all sorts of stuff. So the outcome of that the market is witnessing a higher growth in development spending, particularly in terms of autonomous system validation. So if we try to map this in terms of Aptiv and Wind River M&A scenario, Aptiv themselves had actually developed an AI software last year with the help of a company called Motional, which is a joint venture founded in 2020 between Hyundai Motor Company and them. So we can see that they have plugged the gap between OEM and the tier one, but it still required synthetic and real data sets. So therefore, we can easily make a reasonable assumption that the Wind River will plug the gap with in-house data and simulation software capability. This, however, does not complete the complete scenario problem, because to complete the ecosystem solution, this still requires partnership with more OEMs, silicon vendors. So what will happen, market may well see a future collaboration or merger and acquisition between the tier one supplier and semiconductor vendors, or maybe other software vendors that providing that level of AI training data sets or AI capability to complete the computing platform for the whole ACE requirement. So if I have to summarize this, all my points, it's the ecosystem, software, middleware, where market is focusing more.
Okay, great, thank you. So as you just highlighted, Toy, data is a highly important aspect of this deal. So Richard, could you please share your view on data monetization and what could be a potential business model for data monetization?
Sure, yeah, thanks so much. Well, there really are many benefits to updatable vehicles, and obviously data monetization is probably the most obvious driver in the end. Companies like, particularly Stellantis recently talked about having a target for many billions, I think 20 billion in additional after-sales revenue by 2030 for their vehicles. This is after the vehicle's been sold, and other OEMs have similar numbers in mind. And Mercedes, I've heard Mercedes talk about having a €1 billion expectation for certain services in the future, for example. But basically, whatever the eventual uses, and the OEMs are not always at the moment very specific on the topic of what kind of features they will provide in this over-the-air updating topic here. And I think it's probably because it remains to be seen yet what customers will ultimately pay for. But it's absolutely clear that the vehicles will, once they're in the market, that will increase their value and their stickiness with customers if they always feel up to date. So I think there's a certain amount of value for the customer in the fact that he owns a vehicle for a longer period of time, but it constantly feels fresh, or it can do if they want to. And of course, there's great value to the OEM in that sense. And also, Tawed has already talked about the kind of the data, if you like, the information and data from the vehicle, which is just being collected over the air as well. But I think one of the things about a vehicle being updatable or constantly online and being updatable is, at least from the architecture side, is you need a hardware which is what we call forward-looking hardware. And it's the same idea as a smartphone, and this is really key. It's like you buy a smartphone, and the smartphone has actually got a very advanced hardware, if you like, probably more than it needs, but that allows it during its life to be able to be updated as and when new apps come online or new features become available. And people are used to that model, if you like. But I think for the automotive industry, you need to then, it's an idea that you have to then also provide the right hardware, forward-looking hardware for the vehicle over the life of that platform there. And that needs to be in the place to allow services like, for example, autonomous driving. So it'll mean a lot for electronic control units, for silicon-based processors and memory in these boxes. And it will mean a lot for the sensors, for example, for advanced vehicles with certain levels of autonomy, more advanced autonomy, for example. You will certainly need sensors like radar and cameras and maybe even LiDAR to be fitted, even if these are not initially activated by customers, but they could be in future. And then, they can be provided as options, either or at sale, time of sale, or after the time of sale, if you like. So, and I think, some examples of Tesla providing what they call autopilot access for an additional cost. I think it's some thousands of dollars. But, another example might be on the new Volkswagen Golf, which is not a premium vehicle, for example, that you will have redundant radar systems in the vehicle. All vehicles will have such radar systems. that would allow you to have a more intelligent version of cruise control, for example, in the future. And that's after the sale. You can order that if you like. And you could also you may also think, well, some of the items could be expensive. We talked about the Tesla item, that's quite an expensive item, but some of these are not needed all the time. It could be rented by the hour, it could be a business model, or some features are not needed all year round. For example, you could think of perhaps a heated steering system functionality, for example, which you might just use for winter. But I think the other advantages, and also particularly for the area of autonomy, where the technology is still evolving, if you like, both technologically and also from the point of view of regulations, that having forward hardware allows you to improve that system as that system, the data and the availability of new software comes. So you're able to do that much more frequently in software than you can do that in hardware. I think an interesting example is, I pick an example from China, the OEM NIO. They have developed what they call, over-the-air firmware over-the-air updates, which can actually update in fact, all the ECUs in the vehicle. And they've actually in the last 5 years added hundreds of new features to their existing fleet of cars which they've already sold. Several hundred updates to existing features, and even more than 100 new features there. Even autonomy-related features there. So you can really see the potential in this for this kind of, if you like, over-the-air type of model.
Sure. Okay, that's super interesting. I think, it's certainly going to change the way we use the vehicles on the market for the coming years, which is great. And finally, I'd like to do a quick fire round question. Toy, do you think we will see similar M&As in the coming years?
Of course. I mentioned several times about ecosystem and the ownership of ecosystem. So to own the complete ecosystem, a single stakeholder needs many components: hardware, cloud technologies, operating system, embedded software, including the processing environment itself. So in this particular case, what we are witnessing is the merger between a software provider and an ECU manufacturer, and a case where stakeholder is plugging the gap with software. So if you ask me the question, would it going to continue? Of course, because it's just a start. Because to own it, you need from top all the way to the bottom level, starting from ECU to the system itself, the validation infrastructure, the cloud technologies, data storage, including, as I mentioned, about silicon vendor M&A activities. So I think this is just a start. It's going to rapidly progress in coming years, and I think it is going to make the industry a lot different than what we are seeing today.
Okay,
cool. And same question to you, Richard.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that both tier ones, suppliers and OEMs are actually desperately searching for software engineers to meet the demand for this new frontier, which is being dictated by the software-defined vehicle. And getting access to this kind of talent will be critical to success for many, where the revenue, for most of the revenue streams for OEMs, but also for tier ones wanting to position themselves as the hardware requirements may no longer be the main differentiator, if you like. So, or at least, if not the main differentiator anymore, at least only a part of the system puzzle. So I think, generally speaking, the M&As like this will be very likely in future. I agree with Talbot completely on that.
Okay, great. Thank you. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for here today. A big thank you to you both for joining Autology. And a thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in as well. We'd love to hear from your thoughts on today's episode at our autology@ihsmarket.com email. And you can find out much more at autotechinsight.ihsmarket.com. Don't forget to hit all of the subscribe, like, and follow buttons to stay on track with the latest Autology podcasts. And we look forward to you joining us again in the next episode. Bye for now.